Okay, so in the last video we looked at some of the dangers of growing too fast. Now we're going to look at some of the issues that will occur if a country grows at below 3% or if a country grows too slow. So why does Australia pursue growth of 3 to 4%? Well, firstly, and reason one, is that every year Australia increases its productivity. So productivity is a measure of output per unit of input, so raw materials, capital, and particularly labour. So every year Australia becomes more productive. We generate more output per unit of input, per capital, labour, input basically. Now, being productivity is crucial to our future success and our future growth. But productivity can be described as a double-edged sword, because while productivity is great in that it increases our ability to produce and expands our productive capacity and allows us to produce cheaper and more efficiently, it also means that if we're more productive, we don't need as many labour resources. So for example, if me and two people in the class were building a house and then suddenly two of us become more productive, well, we might be able to build that same house in the same time with only 2 workers as opposed to 3. So often productivity comes at the expense of labour because we need less labour resources when we're more productive. So basically what we mean, if we become 50% more productive, we need to essentially produce 50% more or people are going to lose their jobs, because where people are becoming faster in how they do things, unless we're producing more, we don't need as many people. So we need to be growing at a rate at least as quick as our productivity, or there won't be the need for as many workers. So to combat this, we need to increase growth more than productivity, otherwise we may experience job losses, or jobless growth. And jobless growth is an increase in economic growth, so an increase in output or production. Now generally that requires more labour, because we produce more, we need more workers. But jobless growth is an increase in economic growth without an increase in employment or reduction in the unemployment rate. And this will generally occur when we become more productive, and it's often the case when we become more automated. So we're producing more, we're generating a greater level of output, but we don't need as many workers because we're using more machinery, or our existing workers are working faster, or they might be working longer hours is another reason. So jobless growth is an increase in economic growth without an increase in employment or without a reduction in the unemployment rate. And it's generally caused by increased productivity, increased automation, or people working longer hours. The other reason we need to grow at least 3% is that every year our population gets bigger. So we need to grow by a rate sufficient enough to cater for our increase in population, or GDP per capita will fall. So if economic growth is 1% and population increases by 2%, well then the average Australian is actually worse off. So growth above 3% helps to ensure unemployment does not increase as the labour force increases. So population increases generally associated with more people in the labour force, because more people will want to work, and therefore we need to increase our output in order to ensure that those people in the labour force are able to get a job. So growth needs to be faster than population growth, and it needs to be faster than productivity growth. So what happens if we only grow at 2%? Well, the unemployment rate will soon rise since there's not enough jobs and incomes for a growing labour force. So if we immigrate a lot, and we do immigrate a lot every year, we immigrate about 200,000, if we can't grow at least 2%, there's not going to be enough new jobs and unemployment will rise. So it's a case that total levels of employment can rise and unemployment rise if we have a much bigger population. Okay, and if we don't grow at 2%, it leads to an increase in poverty, falling living standards, and can lead to reduced equity because more people are relying on welfare, so there's more low-income earners. So just a couple of quick things I just want to touch on at the end of this video. It's important to, whenever you get a question on living standards, and I've talked about this in the past, you need to refer to the overall state or well-being experienced by citizens of a nation. And that includes material living standards, or access to goods and services, or purchasing power, measured by GDP per capita, as well as non-material living standards, which we've talked about in the past. So for example, explain how excessive rates of economic growth can cause a decrease in non-material living standards. Define excessive rates of economic growth. So excessive rates of economic growth, generally higher than 4% per annum, is likely to lead to a deterioration in the quality of life of Australians. Why? Because it can create excessive negative externalities in production and consumption. So it can lead to carbon pollution, it can lead to depletion of natural resources or forests, and it can also lead to higher working hours, which increase stress at workplaces. And when we're more stressed, that reduces our enjoyment or quality of life and diminishes non-material living standards. So for a question like this, you would first define what excessive rates of economic growth are, and then link it basically to 2 factors about non-material living standards: pollution
or use of non-renewable resources, as well as quality of life because we're working harder. Explain how a strong rate of economic growth will impact on the level of unemployment in Australia. Again, define what strong economic growth is, a rate of increase in real GDP, generally associated with, you would probably say more than 3% per annum would be more accurate. It's likely to reduce unemployment because strong economic growth means that the level of production has increased, which basically increases the derived demand for labour. Really good term to use, which basically means if there's more production, we need more workers, and therefore helps to reduce the level of unemployment. So again, define what strong rate of economic growth is, make a link to lower unemployment because of increased production. And finally, define the government's goal of strong and sustainable economic growth, and discuss one impact on material living standards of failing to meet this goal. Now again, it's important to remember that your definition is worth 2 marks. So strong and sustainable economic growth refers to a rate of growth strong enough to promote jobs, 3 to 4% or 3 to 3.5%, without being too strong when it creates external inflationary or environmental pressures. That's 2 marks. Fails to achieve strong rates of growth will have a negative impact on employment because people will lose their jobs and incomes in the economy. For example, real growth of real GDP of 1% is unlikely to create additional jobs, which will lead to higher unemployment, lower incomes, and therefore lower material living standards. It's also likely to have a negative impact on material living standards, given the average Australian will be able to purchase fewer goods and services, and real GDP per capita is likely to fall. So strong goal, strong definition of the goal, strong link to employment, to incomes, to purchasing power is important. Material living standards are all about purchasing